Normally when Dina puts something on my honey-do list, I try to postpone it as long as possible.
Oh yes, you do.
And guys, you know exactly what I'm talking about. However, this time she gave me a project to do that I am more than happy to do. $50 worth of material, probably an hour of your time, could possibly save you thousands of dollars, and could even maybe save your RV.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Dan.
Hi, I'm Dina, and we are Rivers to Ridges RV.
We were searching around on an RV forum a while back, and we came across a thread, and I found this very, very interesting. Somebody came up with the idea of using plexiglass in their basement, and I thought this was just an awesome idea. Now, what this really does is, in our basement, we have some non-supporting walls, just to kind of make your basement look cleaner, and really, all they're really there for, it kind of hides the plumbing and a lot of the electrical wires, just to make things look clean, so you don't have to see all that stuff. The problem with that is, though, now you can't see if you have any water leaks, water damage, any loose parts. So that's what we're going to try to fix today. We're going to show you the process that we're going to take, to put some plexiglass in one of those panels, so now we have access to the back. And where our panel is, the panel we decided to put this plexiglass on, is right next to our Nautilus system. And if you're not familiar with the Nautilus system, it's really where all the water comes into your RV. So we're hooked up to city water that plugs into our Nautilus system. If we're going to go dry camp and we have to fill up our freshwater tank, we got to fill it up through the Nautilus system. Now, on the back of these Nautilus systems, it's just connections and hoses everywhere. It actually looks kind of nasty. It's like a mess. But there's a lot of connections, so there's a possibility of having one of those leak. This plexiglass, basically a window into the back.
Like a behind-the-scenes window.
Yeah, behind-the-scenes look.
A lot easier to check.
Yep. It gives us the opportunity every travel day, every time we tear down, every time we set back up, we can take a flashlight, do a quick 10-second check to see if there's any water damage, or we start to see some water puddling up somewhere. Now we know we got to look into that.
We're adding this project to our checklists, so we're sure to check on it each time we travel. You know, pack up or tear down, like Danny said. Also, we do have a habit of turning our water off every time we leave our rig. It's just something that we like to do. However, this is just another very great precaution to take. I'm going to take a walk behind the camera, let Danny do his work, so I can supervise and see if it's good enough to check off the honey-do list.
So our Nautilus system is actually behind this panel over here. The problem is I got to take this panel off first, and then we got to figure out how to, I've never had this panel off, so we got to figure out how to take that one off as well. So let's go ahead and get started with this panel. And again, these panels are not load bearing, so they're just here for looks, aesthetics, just to hide everything behind. Once we get these off, we'll try to get a light back here too to make it a little bit brighter in here for you. So this is the back of our Nautilus system. As you can see, there's a lot of plumbing back here. There's a lot of potential for leaks. You can also see, hopefully, there's a lot of electrical wires and things like that back here. So we're going to end up putting our plexiglass right here on this panel, and it gives us access to see all this back here. Now, in order to take this panel off, I have to go back to the outside. There's a few screws back there. I'll take those out. But one thing I just want you to be aware of, hopefully you can see this. Up here I have, on this same panel, I do have my display for my surge protector. We keep it down here in the basement. There's a couple spots you could put it, either in the basement, or I could wire that up into the kitchen area so we can see it up there. The reason why we keep ours in the basement is when we go to a new site and we plug into the 50 amp electrical power, I can come right here to the basement and look, make sure I have 120 volts on both my legs and 60 hertz. And I can check, if we have any current. Normally it's not going to be any because I have all my other breakers turned off in the RV. But this does allow me to go ahead and turn the breaker on at the pedestal, check to make sure we have good power, and then we can go back up into the RV and turn everything on. Now, if we do start boondocking more, where I'm really concerned with amperage as we're using it, then I may end up moving that display up into the kitchen area so we can monitor more closely. But we're going to take that display off of our panel. Before I take this panel off, I wanted to take a couple measurements. I wanted to see how big of a piece of plexiglass I can put in here and the best place to put it. Now, luckily for us, we purchased an 18-inch by 24-inch sheet of plexiglass. That actually fits perfect right back here. So now I don't have to worry about cutting the plexiglass. Now there are a few ways to cut or scribe your plexiglass. You can use a circular saw, a table saw, a jigsaw, even a coping saw if you have to make curves or curved cuts. We were going to use a scribing method, and what that does is basically like a box cutter or a knife. We're going to scribe where we want to cut it. You have to dig pretty deep, so you're kind of making a weak spot. You would do that on both sides, and then we would just kind of pop the plexiglass on the cut, and it should break right on that scribe mark. Since we're fortunate enough we got the right size sheet of plexiglass, we don't have to do that. Now this is the tool that we would have used. This is for scribing or scraping the plexiglass. Again, it's a controlled break is what it is. So we got lucky. Now we do still have to drill holes in the plexiglass, and I'll explain the process for that when we get to that point. But for now, I'm going to go ahead, once we already have our measurements, I can go ahead and take this panel off now, and we can go outside and start cutting our panel where we need to go. Our water filter is actually screwed into the back of our panel as well. So we have to take the water filter bracket off. And just be careful if you have to do this. You don't want to bind up anything. So we're just going to be careful and gently lay the water filter down so we don't want to bind up any of the plumbing. The very first thing I'm going to do now that my panel is free, I'm just going to mark the top of the panel. I've had the other panel off in the past and I've got confused trying to put it back on upside down or something like that. So I'm going to mark this one on the top. Just makes it easier so the holes will line up easier when I put it back in place. Before we actually get into cutting this panel, let me show you some of the tools that we're going to be using. These are pretty basic tools for the most part. We do have a little circular saw. Now this is a battery operated one just because of RVing. I think it's a little bit easier, a little bit smaller than a normal circular saw. So we're going to use this to cut our paneling. We also have a drill, little battery powered drill we're going to use to drill holes into our plexiglass to hold it in place. We have a couple squares. We have the small square and a larger square, and these are used to make sure, we're just going to make sure when we line up the plexiglass that it's nice and square so we don't put it in crooked. We also have a staple gun with staples. Now what this is for is our paneling has some basically like felt on one side. We're going to end up cutting a bunch of this out, and now I need some of that felt. We're going to have to roll it back over the sides and staple it back down again. So that's what we're going to be doing with that. And we have some, again, just a normal screwdriver. We are using number 10 machine screws. These are stainless screws. These are number 10 by about 1.5 inches long, so we're going to use those, and just a regular Phillips screwdriver to put those in place. And that's it for the tools, and we'll go ahead, we're going to mark this out, we're going to make it nice and square, then we can go ahead and start cutting our board. One last thing I did want to mention before we start cutting, when we lay out our plexiglass, make sure you cut inside the plexiglass. So we want to cut a hole out which is smaller than the size of the plexiglass. I'm going to probably leave about a 2-inch overlap between the paneling and the plexiglass. That gives me plenty of room to drill holes in the plexiglass and go through the paneling and just make it so we're not on the edge of anything. So just don't make the mistake of marking the edge of your plexiglass to make your cuts. Always cut inside the width and the height of your plexiglass. This is the corners of our plexiglass just to mark it. Now that we've marked where our plexiglass is going to go, I just kind of wanted to show you what I'm doing here. This outside line, this is the actual plexiglass itself. So I'll show you in just a second. And what I did is I came in 2 inches from each side for the plexiglass, and that's where our bolts are going to go through, or our nuts and washers and all. That's how we're going to hold the plexiglass. So if you take a look, here's the outside line. That's our plexiglass. This inside line right here, This is what we're going to cut out of the wood, and then we can put our fasteners here in this part of the wood. Okay, I think that's it. Now we have a hole. So what we're going to do now is we're going to prep this for the plexiglass. Again, we have this felt on here. I want to kind of rewrap it. I'm going to have to cut it. I'm going to staple it around the hole now, get it all prepped and ready for the plexiglass. We put our felt back in place, and now we have this felt that we need to get rid of. Now again, what we want to do is we're going to kind of come in from a 45, 45. We're going to split this so we can fold this over, then we're going to staple it back down just to make this look nice and clean. And we can just trim this off and we'll cut this. So now you can see we put our felt back on. We have our hole cut out. The felt is nice and wrapped around. Our next step is going to be to attach the plexiglass. Now, a couple things that I'm going to do. I'm going to put my plexiglass on the back side of this panel. Now, the reason for that is that means it's going to be from the basement, it's going to be indented. That way there, when I'm sliding pieces or bins inside the basement, they should not be hitting my plexiglass. They should still be hitting the panel. So we're going to kind of protect our plexiglass just a little bit. So the only thing we have left to do as far as the plexiglass goes, so we have to drill some holes through it. Now, a couple things to be aware of when you're drilling plexiglass. You don't want your bits to get hot. When they get hot, that helps, can make the plexiglass crack a little bit easier. So you want to keep your bits cool, and you can do that by spraying some kind of lubricant on, like a WD-40, even like a Dawn dish soap or anything to help keep them cool. The other thing you want to do is use a slow speed drill or slow your drill down a little bit and just apply very little pressure. Let the drill bit do the work. Don't try to push it through. Take your time and you should be good to go. So we're going to put our plexiglass back in place. We'll probably clamp it in place and then start drilling our holes. The other thing I'm going to do, you'll see, is we have left the protective screening or the protective sheet on the plexiglass throughout this whole process, but I will also put a little bit of painter's tape where I'm drilling just to help to protect it a little bit more. Now, I'm not clamping these down super tight, just enough to hopefully keep this from moving. Just on the corners of this, and this allows me one thing, to be able to mark with a pencil where I'm going to cut. And it makes it just a little bit easier to see, but it also helps protect the plexiglass as well. So I'll do this in all four corners. So the only tools we need now is just the machine screws to hold the plexiglass together. So we have number 10 screws. We have locking nuts for those and washers for both sides. And I also got some like little rubber washers as well, just to give a little bit of cushioning on the plexiglass. Okay, now we're all set. The last thing we're going to do is go ahead and pull off this protective film. Also have one on the other side. Hopefully you can see all 6 of our drill holes. There's no chipping. There's no chipping on the corners. Everything looks good. So I think we did a pretty good job. First time I've actually done that in quite a long time, so I'm happy with that. So again, we're putting our plexiglass on the back side. This is just to help protect a little bit when we take stuff in and out of the basement. Okay, we've got our screws all tightened down now. You can see what the finished product looks like. The felt actually came out better than I was hoping. It did have some glue on the back of it. We kind of thought we'd have to re-glue it, but just getting it around and getting it pulled tight, I think we're going to be okay. It's like the glue is actually holding again. So now what we're going to do is take our final product, go back into the basement and get everything hooked back up. We got this panel put back in place. I still have to screw in my display for my surge protector. I'm just gonna move that over here for right now. But I really wanted you to see this. You can really see really well back here. So now anytime we travel, we tear down, we set back up, all we have to do is just look in here and we can see if we have any issues at all. Hopefully with the light, you can see all that in there. It's just so much easier. All we have left to do now is to put our other panel back in place and we're done. Now this project could probably have been done in about 1 hour if we weren't filming. So again, 1 hour of my time, $50 worth of material, and look at the final outcome. I don't know how much better I feel. Water leaks always scares us. We're always worried about water leaks, and now we have one more tool at our disposal to help us look for water leaks and check and hopefully catch them early enough. If you found this video helpful at all, please hit the like button. Help this video spread to other RVers. It would be such an awesome feeling if this video could help another RVer maybe detect a water leak soon enough so they didn't have to bring the RV into the shop or even save them thousands of dollars. So please hit the like button and help some other people out as well. But just as important, remember, always live life to the fullest.
Y'all have a blessed week. Here comes the final inspector to make sure Daddy did a good enough job to get his check mark on his honey-do list. What do you think, Rodeo? Did he pass? Did he pass? I think that's a yes.